Good morning, dear students. Welcome to BPHES CSRD, Institute of Social Work and Research, Social Work Lectures, Method Course 1, Working with Individuals and Families, Social Casework, Unit 4, Part 2, Skills of Social Caseworker. In the previous lectures, we have completed the concept, history, values, principles, process of the social casework. Today, we are going to start with skills. Actually, these skills follow the tools, which was the last lecture. Unit 4, Part 2, Skills of Social Caseworker. What is the meaning of skill? Skill is an ability and capacity acquired through deliberate, systematic, and sustained effort to smoothly and adaptively carry out complex activities or job functions involving ideas. They are the cognitive skills, tools, that is technical skills, and attitudes, that is interpersonal skills. The cognitive skills deal with ideas, technical skills deals with things, and interpersonal deals with people. So it is a ability, ताकत, capacity. ट्रेनिंग के द्वारा, प्रैक्टिस के द्वारा हमें जो मिलते हैं वो कैपेसिटी को स्किल्स बोलते हैं. So these skills are very important part of any profession. Every profession has a unique set of skills. And social work is very complex profession because we are working with individuals, families, and social workers have got so many methods, and each methods have its own skills. Now, as I have mentioned earlier, there are three types of skills. The first one is cognitive skills. It means acquisition of appropriate knowledge base, psychological, social, economic, political, legal, philosophical information. The social caseworker need to acquire a sound knowledge base. हमारे पास ऐसा जानकारी चाहिए क्लाइंट को समझ में आने के लिए. So in order to deepen our understanding about the client, we need to study psychology, a little bit of sociology, economics, political science, law, and philosophy, so that we can understand the client, his social circumstances, and we can effectively help the person. Unless we are knowledgeable, unless we have that cognitive skills, we will not be able to help the client. Then cognitive skills also include the knowledge, a deep understanding about the principles, values, and professional ethics. Thirdly, the social caseworker should have the skills of appropriate use of the casework process. Process का knowledge. Process मतलब प्रक्रिया. Diagnosis, treatment, follow-up, termination. So these all skills, process-related skills, are required for the social caseworker. Finally, an appropriate use of the knowledge according to the need of the person and situation. This is something prudence, wisdom. हमारे पास जानकारी है, knowledge है, ये कब इस्तेमाल करना है, कैसे इस्तेमाल करना है, उसका भी स्किल चाहिए. So that is the skill of appropriate use of the knowledge as per the need of the person, as per the need of the situation. Then the second type of skills are the technical skills. Now, we have learned in the previous lesson there are 7 tools: intake, interview, home visit, networking, relationship. So all these tools, then recording, require technical knowledge. We need to practice them. Then we develop the technique of using these tools. So appropriate use of the tools is very important for the success of casework. So technical skills involve appropriate use and getting expertise, experience in using different tools. Then finally, interpersonal skills. This is the third set of skills, which means appropriate use of attitude. So लोगों के साथ कैसे बात करना है, how to deal with emotionally, how to establish trustworthy relationship. हमारा attitude के साथ we should have the skills of starting a purposeful relationship, to begin a proper relationship with the client. That is the interpersonal skills. Now, let us discuss in detail all these skills. Now, under the cognitive skill, mainly we discuss the process skills. Process skills means social casework process. Vyakti sahakaryacha prakriya. We know that we have learned in the third unit the process in details. There are 6 processes. The first one is study. With regard to study, we require the assessment skills. Assessment means tapasani, mulyankan. How to evaluate the client's capacity, the client's situation, how to assess the client's personal and the social background. Now, the second cognitive skill is the critical thinking skill. Critical means we need to understand the merits and demerits of each ideas, each disposition, each attitude of the person, of the client. We must be able to evaluate the client's thinking process. We must be able to say whether the client is thinking in a proper manner or whether there is any drawback, whether the client needs to improve his thinking skills or his action. So critical thinking means a skill to critically analyze, to understand the merits and demerits of every action, thinking and attitude and even feeling, so that we can give a realistic feedback to the client. We can tell the client whether the client is thinking properly, whether the client is acting properly, whether the client has an appropriate attitude. Unless the caseworker has a critical thinking skill, we cannot really guide, we cannot really help the person. Now, the third skill with regard to the process is the problem solving skills. Samasya sodne ka. So, when all the clients have approached the caseworker with certain problems, ये प्रॉब्लम को अच्छी तरफ समझ में आना, उसमें इंसाइट बिल्डिंग, अंडरस्टैंडिंग द प्रॉब्लम इन डेप्थ and understanding how these problems are evolved. Sometimes what we see is only an apparent problem. There are deeper problems. there are root causes, the real problem. Let me bring to the same example which I discussed with you when I shared about the process, the school dropout. School dropout is an apparent problem, but behind that there are three main problems, the root causes, the root problems. They are the lack of motivation on the part of the student, negligence by parents, negligence by teachers. So where the caseworker has to work, the caseworker has to work directly upon solving these three problems. Not really solving the school dropout. That will automatically disappear because that is only an apparent problem. There are deeper problems. So understanding the deeper problem, the root causes, is the starting point of solving the problem. So we are breaking that main problem into small problems. We will discuss this later when we discuss the techniques. Now, diagnostic skill. We need to have the skill for proper diagnosis. In the diagnosis, I had discussed with you psychological or clinical diagnosis and social diagnosis. The caseworker should have both the skills. He should have the clinical diagnosis skill to understand the IQ of the client, to understand the personality of the client, to understand the drawbacks in his thinking, in his feeling, and within his person, intrapersonal problems. So that is the clinical diagnostic skill. Sometimes caseworker can take the help of a psychologist, an educational psychologist, or a counselor in order to handle this clinical diagnostic part. The second part is the social diagnosis, etiological diagnosis. ये समस्या का इतिहास ढूंढने का, समझने का skill. So for that, sometimes the caseworker has to interview the family members, interact with the parents, teachers, and other stakeholders. So diagnosis is a teamwork. So the caseworker requires that team building skill to create a working team for the better diagnosis of the problem of the client. So this is the diagnostic skill. Now the fifth one is the intervention skill. Intervention is how to conduct this interview, interviewing skill, communication skill. So how to treat, how to undertake the social casework intervention, how to conduct the casework interview. So that is the skill. This skill has to be developed only by practice. And finally, the skill of follow-up. Once the casework is in advanced stage, the caseworker conduct the follow-up. Take the feedback. Taking feedback from the client, other stakeholders, parents, teachers. So that's the way the caseworker assesses the success of his intervention and decide whether the case has to be terminated, whether the case has to be transferred or it should be referred. So these are the skills of follow-up. So these are the process skills. This is one of the important part of cognitive skills, the process skills. Now, what are the major technical skills? Technical skills, we have learned the tools. So the use of the tools is the meaning of technical skill. So we need to develop that skill of efficient, effective, and successful use of the tools of the casework. And the first important tool is the communication tools. In communication, there are verbal communication, non-verbal communication, written communication, and the caseworker has to improve, develop all these skills. Verbal communication skill, non-verbal communication skill, written communication skills. And he should have the skills for designing and the use of appropriate message, media, channel This is all the communication skills. He should know what to communicate, through what media, to what extent, how the communication has to be handled with the client. Communication is one of the important tool for casework, and communication is another important skills. It is the skills of using the tool of communication. Finally, feedback skill. How to collect the feedback. Feedback is collected through verbal communication, non-verbal communication, written communication, sometimes through social media. So, there are different ways of collecting feedback, and the caseworker has to develop all these skills of collecting the feedback, managing the feedback, and improving his own or her own practice. Then, another skill is the observation skill. It is also part of the communication skill. Observation is very important. Nirishan. So, the caseworker should be a very good observer. He or she has to observe the client and understand what the client wants to communicate. It is part of the non-verbal communication skill, observation. Through observation, the caseworker can understand the client better and diagnose the client's problem, what the client is trying to communicate, what is in the mind of the client. This can be understood by proper observation. The third one is the interviewing skill. We know there are 5 types of interview: intake interview, diagnostic interview, then casework proper, treatment, intervention interview, follow-up interview, termination interview. All these different types of interviews require different set of skills. And this is the most important skills for social caseworker. The caseworker has to learn how to conduct an intake interview, how to conduct a diagnostic interview, how to conduct an intervention interview, how to make a follow-up interview, how to conduct a termination interview. Unless the caseworker practice it in their field work, he cannot develop. Skills are not learned just by reading, just by listening. They have to be learned only through practice. That's why the skill part of the profession has ASK, attitude, skills, knowledge. Attitude means the motivation, the dedication, the inspiration. Skills are the practice, the field-based practice. So, all these skills have to be practiced and learned. Finally, the knowledge that can be learned through listening, by reading, by going through different experiences, by listening video, audio and video lectures. You can improve your knowledge base. Internet, by browsing, you can also improve your knowledge base. Skills are the most important part of the profession, which is acquired only through practice. That is why social work has got 40%, sometimes 50% of practice, field work. So all these skills, technical skills, have to be improved, picked up, developed only through practice. And the fourth one is again related to the communication, the listening skills. How to improve your listening skill. You need not be always talking. Counselor, sometimes you have this, superstition. We have to always talk, give suggestions, advices, and the client is only to listen. Listening skill is on the part of the caseworker. You should be a good listener first. You must give your attentive ears to the client. The client will understand this worker, this social worker cares for me. He or she listened to me. So you should improve your listening skills. Attentive listening. By giving the cues that you are listening, by nodding your head, by smiling, by expressing some emotions on your face, subtle ways of expressing emotion that will encourage the client to open up, to share everything. If you have good listening skill, you can very well learn the problems of the client very easily. So listening is very important. You must allow the clients to talk more. It is the client's life. It is the client's decision. It is the client who has to get empowered. And the client has to lead a life by his own, by her own. For that, you should talk less. You should listen more and help the client to come to some conclusion by himself, by herself. For that, you need to be a good listener. So your listening skills are very important for casework practice. Then fifth one is the documentation skill. That is recording skill. In the recording tool, we have discussed the process recording, narrative recording, summary recording. So you need to develop the skills of all these type of recording only by practicing. So in your field work, you should write all these type of records, show to your supervisor. So supervisor will read them, will give the remarks, and by reading, going through that remarks, you can improve your recording skill. So it is only through practice you can improve your documentation skill. So you should know how to write a narrative recording, how to write a process recording, how to write a summary record, how to prepare a summary report as per the demand of the agency, demand of the other professionals. So all this recording needs some recording skills which you have to improve, which you have to develop through practice. Finally, organization and coordination skills. So this is another important technical skills for social caseworker. The caseworker should be well organized. He should be a good coordinator. He or she should know how to plan each casework session. He should be well prepared, what to ask, how to go about, how many sessions need to be there, how to set the goal, how to guide the entire social casework process. So he should be well organized. The caseworker should not be stressed. The stress can be removed only by better organization. Time management is an important part of organization. The caseworker should be informing the client his exact time of interview or the session, and he should complete the session as far as possible within the time limit and schedule the program in such a way that it is less stressful for the caseworker as well as for the client. So it includes time management, it includes preparation, it includes follow-up, it includes proper documentation. You should set apart time for everything. When to meet the parents, when to interact with the significant stakeholders of the client. So everything will be properly organized and they should be coordinated. There should be coordination. Suppose you have a diagnosis, you need to have a teamwork with teacher, with social worker. You need to coordinate with them. You need to fix appointment with them. So all these things are important. These are the management skills. Social caseworker is also a good manager. He should have an organization skill, coordination skill that's important for success of the casework. Now finally comes the interpersonal or the attitudinal skills. So interpersonal skills means the skills that helps you to go along with others effectively, pleasantly. So there are mainly 5 skills. Respect for diversity means each person is unique. Everyone has different cultural background, values, religious beliefs, ideologies. So respecting the diversity is the first interpersonal skill, so that you will not have prejudice You will have impartial attitude towards the client. You will be able to maintain non-discriminatory, egalitarian disposition, attitude with others. So you should always respect other person's uniqueness. You should allow him to be different, allow her to be different. Every person has the right to be independent, individualistic, that means unique. Everyone has a right to be unique. So you should respect the uniqueness of the personality. That is the respect for cultural diversity. The second one is empathy. This is the emotional oneness. You should feel with the client. Life is not simply cognitive domain, only thinking, only rational. It is also emotional. The emotionality gives colors to the life. Life is become lively only because of the emotions. So this emotional involvement is called the empathy, empathetic skills. You should feel with the client. You should feel what the client feels. It is the emotional identification with the client. So this is the skill of empathy. Third one is advocacy. Advocacy means fighting for justice, standing for the right of the client. If you are working with children, sometimes you have to play the role of the advocate. You must take the rights, you must stand for the right and take the case to legal authorities, the civil agencies, and you must become the voice of the voiceless. That is advocacy. You must be the voice of the voiceless in such a way the client is not able to express, the client is not realizing his or her right. There the caseworker will make him aware of his right, her right, and will help him to establish his right. Help the client to get his rights from appropriate agencies, elders, and the civil agencies, civil authorities. Fourth one is leadership. The caseworker should be a leader. The leader in the sense, a model, a role model. The client can learn so many things from the caseworker. The emotional balance, the assertiveness, value base, the communication skills, the skills of dealing with others, interpersonal skills. So you play the role of the role model, and the client learns so many things from interacting with you. So caseworker should be always a pleasant personality. Here his or her personal problem should not interfere with the casework. So client will be always looking at the caseworker, how to talk, how to express, how to deal with situations. So sometimes the caseworker can make personal disclosure. The caseworker can use his or her own self. The self is a very powerful tool in casework. So using the self means showing the appropriate ways of expressing, appropriate ways of talking, appropriate ways of behaving in the society. So that is the leadership skills. That is the way the caseworker can influence the client in a positive sense. The client can easily pick up some tips of successful living from the caseworker. Finally, the relaxation and decompression skill. Sometimes the caseworker is overloaded. There's so much involved with the client and there is a compassion fatigue. Sometimes the caseworker is taken away by the emotions of the client. He feels so much with the client. The caseworker is helping the client so much. The client is not improving. The child is not improving its learning. The drug addicts is not improving from the addictions. So you are working with a woman who is battered, who is suffering, he victim of domestic violence. Her situation is not improving in spite of your repeated, your long-term intervention. So all these ineffective interventions will give you tension, stress, fatigue. The caseworker sometimes will get so much stressed. So he should know how to relax. Some meditation. He should or she should spend leisure time in some activities like music, sports. He should properly relax. He should not carry the worries and tensions of the office to the home. He should have his personal time. He should have a set of activities, maybe watching movie, spending some time in social media, spending some time in a morning walk, outdoor activity, spending time with the friends, going for outing, listening to music, playing music. So sometime the caseworker should spend on himself and herself, with her family, with his family. So to decompress all the stress gathered, accumulated in the field. So these are the important skills: interpersonal skill, technical skills, and cognitive skills. Now let me just summarize the most important skills which we have discussed just now. So these are the important skills. We have completed the skill session. Just to remind you the important skills: communication skill, observation skill, active listening skill, recording and documentation skill, intervention skill, assessment skill, problem solving skill, advocacy and leadership skills, critical thinking skill, respect for diversity, organization skill, coordination skill, relaxation, and decompression skills. So these are the important skills required for social caseworker, kaushalya. So this you need to practice and acquire. You cannot simply learn this by listening to my lecture or going through some books or going through some internet resources. Of course, you need some information. More than that, you need regular practice. Whenever you go for a field work, fix one of the skill as one of the objective for your casework, your field work. So skill base is very important part for casework practice. In fact, the casework itself is a skill, and you need to have 10-15 skills broadly classified into cognitive, technical and interpersonal. Cognitive का मतलब है knowledge base, जानकारी, information, cognitive base. वो केस वर्क क्या है, वो कैसे करना है, उसके बारे में जानकारी तो चाहिए. दैट इज द कॉग्निटिव स्किल. वो आपके पास अपडेटेड नॉलेज चाहिए. दैट इज द कॉग्निटिव स्किल. रीडिंग, दिस यू कैन लर्न बाय रीडिंग. नाउ द टेक्निकल स्किल्स और टूल्स है, आप कैसे इंप्लीमेंट करना है. आपके पास जानकारी है, ये जानकारी फील्ड में कैसे इस्तेमाल करना है. दैट इज द टेक्निकल स्किल. इसको तो फील्ड में जाना कंपलसरी है. आपको उसमें कम्युनिकेशन है, लिसनिंग, ऑब्जर्वेशन, ये केस वर्क कैसे कंडक्ट करते हैं, इंटरव्यू कैसे कंडक्ट करना है, होम विजिट कैसे करना है, फॉलोअप कैसे करना है, टर्मिनेशन, विड्रॉवल, ये सब कैसे करना है, कैसे, हाउ टू डू. दैट इज द टेक्निकल स्किल. हाउ टू डू, कैसे करना है, ये कौशल्य आपको फील्ड से ही मिलेगा. इसलिए आपको फील्ड वर्क में जब जाते वक्त आपको हर फील्ड वर्क को एक एक टेक्निकल स्किल आपको उसमें गोल में रखो, आज मैंने ये स्किल सीखने वाला हूँ. So you have to practice each of the technical skills by practice. Finally, आपका interpersonal skill. You know, social work is very interesting profession, क्योंकि लोगों के साथ आपका काम है. बाकी बहुत सारे प्रोफेशन है, बैंकिंग प्रोफेशन पैसे के साथ है. अगर आप इंजीनियर हैं, आपका काम जो है कंप्यूटर के साथ है, मटेरियल के साथ है, टूल्स के साथ है, मशीन के साथ है. लेकिन सोशल वर्क में क्या है, लोगों के साथ है. इट इज ए रिलेशनशिप बेस्ड प्रोफेशन. इसमें इंटरपर्सनल स्किल सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है. लोगों के साथ कैसे बात करना है, उसका एटीट्यूड के साथ कैसे बात करना है. ये डाइवर्स कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी, अलग अलग स्ट्रेंजर लोगों के साथ, अलग बिल्कुल व्यत्यस्त लोगों के साथ कैसे काम करना है, ये आपका इंटरपर्सनल स्किल्स है. इसमें आपका खुद का एटीट्यूड के साथ काम करना है, लोगों का एटीट्यूड के साथ काम करना है, आपका लीडरशिप, आपका लोगों के साथ व्यवहार करने का तरीका. सो दिस इंटरपर्सनल स्किल ऑल्सो कैन बी डेवलप्ड ओनली थ्रू प्रैक्टिस. फील्ड वर्क में आपको ये प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं. इसके लिए आपका मोटिवेशन चाहिए, लोगों के साथ बात करने का आपका जो आपको एटीट्यूड, एप्टीट्यूड, यू शुड बी लाइकिंग टू स्पेंड टाइम विद द पीपल. अगर लोगों के साथ काम करना पसंद नहीं तो ये प्रोफेशन आपके लिए नहीं है. कभी कुछ लोग सोचते हैं अरे फील्ड वर्क कितना भारी है, CSRD में फील्ड वर्क तो बहुत मुश्किल है, एक महीना विलेज में जाकर रखना है, ये बहुत मुश्किल है. अगर आप सोचते हैं ये बहुत मुश्किल है, ये प्रोफेशन आपके लिए नहीं है. ये फील्ड वर्क इज द मोस्ट एंजॉयबल पार्ट ऑफ सोशल वर्क. फील्ड वर्क में क्या है, आप लोगों के साथ हैं. क्लास में क्या है, आप किताब के साथ है, कंप्यूटर के साथ है, लाइब्रेरी में है. यू शुड बी मोर एंजॉयबल इन द फील्ड. लोगों के साथ बात करना, उसके साथ केस वर्क करना, ग्रुप वर्क करना, कम्युनिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन करना, आप ये काम करते हैं लोगों के साथ, आपको ये पसंद आना चाहिए, आपको मजा होना चाहिए, फिर आप ये प्रोफेशन आपके लिए अच्छा है. बिकॉज दिस इज ए रिलेशनशिप बेस्ड प्रोफेशन. कितना आप फील्ड वर्क एंजॉय करते हो उतना आपका ये सोशल वर्क प्रोफेशन एंजॉयबल होगा. ज़्यादा फील्ड वर्क मिला तो आपको खुश होना चाहिए. कभी कभी बोलते एक फील्ड वर्क दिन मिस हो गया, आपको 2 फील्ड वर्क मिला है, 2 फील्ड वर्क मिस हो गया, 4 फील्ड वर्क उसके कॉम्पनसेशन करना है. 1 हफ्ते का फील्ड वर्क मिस हो गया, 2 हफ्ते का एक्स्ट्रा फील्ड वर्क करना है. यू शुड बी हैप्पी. उतना टाइम लोगों के साथ बात करने का, काम करने का, आपका स्किल्स इंप्रूव करने का मौका मिल रहे. यू शुड बी हैप्पी इन फील्ड वर्क. दैट इज द मेन पार्ट ऑफ योर सोशल वर्क. So I am concluding here. So this is I have discussed with you the cognitive skills, the technical skills and the interpersonal skill. आपका जानकारी भी चाहिए और एक आपका केस वर्क कैसे करना है, टेक्निकल स्किल चाहिए, लोगों के साथ आपका व्यवहार करने, उसके साथ काम करने का जो स्किल है इंटरपर्सनल, ये सब चाहिए. So these are the 3 type of skills which you require to practice casework effectively. So in the next class we will be studying techniques and roles for social casework, tantra and bhumika, caseworker ka bhumika. So wish you all the best. So see you in the next class.